Thank you.
You bet.
All right. Good morning, everyone. This is good audio? I can be heard okay? Thank you. All right. So, thank you, Chris. I'm Mick, and I'm excited to share with you today some of the things we've learned at Andersen Corporation with respect to leader standard work. And you're going to hear a lot of common things from things that Michael said and things that Jackie said, but maybe a slightly different emphasis or another point of view to reinforce the importance of things. So, Andersen's been around for over 115 years, and that's been what we like to call a journey of value creation for us, because when we started in 1903, we were a lumber yard. And we started to see that one of the common things people were buying their lumber for was for window frames. So that led us to evolve and offer a bundle of window frames. So by listening to what our customers want, we've been evolving our products, from bundles of window frames to assembled window frames to assembled windows and doors, to doors, windows of all shapes, sizes, and materials, including our own composite material. As demands have grown and demands and tastes have changed, we've evolved and are introducing new technologies and new services into our offerings for our customers. Some of that evolution has required acquiring companies with the products and processes and talents to complement what we have so we all deliver better for our customers. And we've grown into a corporation that spans across the United States, into Canada now, and Europe as well. And every team we acquire, and my team has the responsibility of teaching new leaders in our organization our Andersen management system. And that Andersen management system includes leader standard work. And very often what we see is leader standard work is typically taught, and traditionally has been taught after process standard work. And one of the things I have to combat is a little confusion between the two, or a belief that the two things are very different. And we found that that's a myth. The two things are actually very much the same, if not exactly the same. It's merely the application that'll be a little different. So to demystify it a little bit, let's contrast them. So on a process standard work, we really want to understand the work, which is the human aspect of a process. That's what we go to the Gemba, we observe, and we understand. On a leader standard work, the human aspect we really want to understand is the role. What are the different things that individual needs to do to contribute to the organization? To understand the work in a process, what we need to understand are 4 key things. To understand a role, what we need to understand are 4 key things. And these may look different, but again, these really are the same 4 things. So the thinking that's required to understand process standard work is the same required to understand leader standard work, and vice versa. What insights you gain from one, you can apply to the other. A standard is merely having a common set of expectations. When we lack a standard, we walk into problems. And those problems will often get verbalized in different ways, but you may see the same problem appear in both. Okay? In both scenarios, we may be more person-dependent than we want to be. We'd rather our enterprise be more process-dependent and more role-dependent, so that we can free up the people to improve both the processes and the roles, and to make our organization better. Okay? But when we fail to do that, again, we've got problems. On the process side, you'll hear things like, this process is an art, not a science, it's not repeatable yet. But that's something we know how to work on. The same can exist on the role side, but very quickly it becomes a different degree of pain for an organization, because it feels a lot more personal, because we often refer to names. So we'll start questioning Joe rather than questioning the role that we've given Joe and the enabling Joe to be successful. But again, these things are both the same. When it comes to the leader side, the key takeaway is we need to understand the role of that individual and understand that it's really just a set of work or a set of processes that have to be managed together. So as my team have gone into new leaders teams and new acquisitions, or new leaders coming on into our company, we've attempted to deploy leader standard work. And as you've heard from my colleagues today, most first attempts don't survive. But in trying to deploy it and reflecting on why it didn't work, or didn't work right the first time, we started to learn things we need to do better or different in new deployments. Very often we heard pushback, or we got verbal feedback or of hurdles and obstacles getting away in the deployment. And you will either have heard these or you will hear these as you attempt to do this. We'll get comments like, the processes can have standard work, but people shouldn't. And that's true. We never actually make a standard work for a person. We'll make a standard work for a role. Because again, a person doesn't need to be standardized. They need to be freed up to improve the role and improve the processes to make our organization better. Other comments we'll get are, well, I'm not an operator. I don't have routine work. I don't have repeatable work. None of my days are standard. Well, the truth is, with respect to standard, it's a chicken and egg. If you want a standard day, you have to define a standard and work to make it standard, to get the standard you want. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of success or defeat, depending on which way you want to go with it. If you want a standard, make a standard, learn how to do the standard. Similarly, when it comes to repeating work, we've got comments like, well, I'm a manager or a director. I don't have repeating tasks. Well, yes, you do. Let's think about it. Every day you've got to do email. The volume of the email may change. The customers of the email may change. But nevertheless, processing email is a repetitive task. So all work is really cyclic and repeating. The only question is, how frequently does it repeat? And can I bundle different things together? The other big comment we get is the individuals telling us, hey, I don't need a checklist. Or more accurately, I don't need a checklist anymore. So very often, leader standard work is mistakenly thought as just a checklist. And as a new hire into an organization, checklists can be very powerful for me to understand the expectations and establish a rhythm, a routine, or a habit. But as soon as I have that, I don't need a checklist anymore. So it's just as well leader standard work is not a checklist. It goes beyond that. And we'll cover that as the slides advance. So my team, having heard that recurring feedback, we took a big step back and asked ourselves, why? Why do we keep running into the same roadblocks? It's got to be something in our method of deployment and execution. So let's be honest about that we've got room to improve, and we can tackle that. So we found 3 core root causes that we felt we needed to tackle. And I'm going to unpack each of those with our countermeasures on the next couple of slides. But when we had that reflection, we also had the big takeaway, and you've heard the word already today. It's about the behaviors. All lean tools, all lean practices are really first and foremost trying to establish new behaviors. They're trying to teach us the new behaviors. If I want to learn how to swim, I'm going to have to get in the water and try to swim to develop the new behavior of lifting my head to breathe and pumping my arms and feet the right way. But I've got to be mindful that I have to learn that behavior through trying it first to become skilled and then adept at the method. So we had to ask ourselves, what is leader standard work? What behaviors is it really trying to get across? What are we really trying to develop with this tool? So I said 3 root causes, and the first one was a lack of purpose, or a lack of us teaching with the purpose. Because we used to teach it, here's the tool, go use the tool. And then be surprised when that didn't work. So we evolved a little bit. We evolved an entire way of educating people in an organization to leader standard work. And we now do it in 3 phases that you see there, and I'll tell a story explaining the 3 phases. So instead of bringing a team together and telling them, you will do standard work, here's the way you do standard work, we now start with the why, or the what's in it for you. And more accurately, we don't teach with the why. I'll steal with pride from Jackie saying you can't teach this with PowerPoint. 100%. We don't PowerPoint this training anymore. We bring the team together who feels they need this, and we ask them the following. We ask them to go through the following exercise. Imagine a day when you finish work, you leave the building, you get into your car, you turn on the ignition, and you think, I crushed it. Today was awesome. I got everything done. I'm feeling really good. I'm going home happy, and I'm excited to come in tomorrow. Now, fortunately, everyone's had at least one day like that. So the team reflects on that, and then we move to the second part where we go, now, imagine a day, you get into your car, you turn on the ignition, and that's not the feeling you have. Why? What was the reason that you could not go home feeling successful? We have them list out all the reasons. We have them do an infinity map of all the reasons so they as a team learn what they as a team are thinking, not just individuals. And then we ask them, with all these hurdles getting in the way of a successful day, which of these are in your control or at least influence on improving? And in all groups we've done this with, we've seen pretty much all the things are in their control. So now they've discovered that what's in it for them should be a successful day. So then we move to the next phase, which is, well, what do you need to have a successful day? What do we need to counteract those hurdles that are getting in your way? And that list can be long and varied depending on the team we're with and the current situation of the team and the challenges ahead for that team and that division. That said, all teams will have at least the following three things. They'll tell us, well, something getting in my way is I don't have the time in the day to get everything done. Okay, so now the team has discovered that they need to manage their capacity. Another thing they'll say is, I don't know if I'm working on the right things, or I don't know if I'm working on the best right things. So now the team has discovered that they need to learn how to manage priority. Okay. Another common is, I don't know if we agree or we trust each other to be working on the right things. So now the team has discovered that they need to learn how to manage alignment. So they've self-discovered the what's in it for them, successful days. And they've self-discovered that they need to be able to manage at least three things. And that is my opening to go, okay, now I've earned the right to show you some tools. These tools are to help you learn how to manage these things. Now there's more than one tool, because no one lean tool does everything. We'll keep focus on leader standard work for today. But again, now we've earned the right for people to think of the tool as a way to learn and start to develop a new behavior and a new skill set. And they're vested in it because it feels like it's going to tackle things getting in their way of feeling successful. And that's been a game changer for us. So then we get into the mechanics of leader standard work. And from our language, we say it's about developing a routine. The real purpose of leader standard work is to have and develop a routine. So the first thing we do is we have to understand their capacity. So we have to understand all the work that's on our plate. So the first thing we do is we make a picture of the plate. We ask people to think about, more importantly, not just a plate, the plate you want. Yes, there will be days when you have to work earlier. Yes, there will be days you'll have to stay late. Yes, there will be days where you can kiss your lunch goodbye. However, those should not be normal. Because if we don't manage our capacity, it won't be managed, and then those exceptions become the normal. So what's the plate we want to have? Then we ask people to think about, what are those daily must-do things? What's the right amount of time to spend on them, and what's the best time for you to get them done? Knowing when they have to be delivered to your customer. And we ask people to slot those in. Okay? Then we start to ask people about the weekly or the bi-weekly, the monthly, the periodic tasks. And we ask them to think about, again, what's the best time to do those, and how do you do them in a way that doesn't blow up your daily routine? So how do you slot them in between the daily things you have to get done? Now, if that picture looks a little messy to you, if you're like me, an anal retentive perfectionist, and that looks noisy, good. Because then the fourth iteration we ask, how do you maximize that green space, that available time for the non-routine? That's the time when we have to deal with the surprises, the drop-in requests. That's the time we have to do our project tasks or our Kaizen events. That's also the time we have to do mentoring and coaching of our teams, as well as our own development, including attending events like we're all at today. But the importance here is not just to have more or maximize your green space time. We really want the reverse too, where we're structuring the routine time. Because as adults and as adult learners, the power of routine is significant. Routine is where we develop new habits, and routine helps us to develop new skills. Routine also lets us automate some of the decision making. Someone might ask me, Mick, I need to meet with you today urgently. Can you meet at 8 o'clock? And I can go, you know what? 8 o'clock, I'm usually doing my one-on-ones. Does 9 o'clock work? I'm free immediately at 9. That person will typically say, good, let's do it. They don't feel disappointed because they heard the request was heard, and we've just made an action and aligned on a decision of how we're going to act on it. So there's a lot of power in a routine. If you're looking at this and you start to see connections, and you heard some earlier with visual management, or connections with exception management, or even connections with pitch and hijunka, then good, you're connecting different parts of the lean mindset together. And that usually is a good sign that you're seeing a tool more holistically in lean. Okay. So we've aligned on the purpose, and we've start to establish a routine. Now we walk into the next common roadblock, and the next root cause we had to tackle. And at this point in the deployment, I'll usually get a lot of pushback, or to be fair, a lot of pushback from some. And some of that pushback is, what do you mean I need to spell out how I'm spending my day and week all the time? I'm a leader. I don't need to be managed to this detail. You're micromanaging me. It's an understandable reaction, but it's actually misplaced. Because what we're not trying to do is micromanage. What we're trying to do is the reverse. We're trying to give more autonomy. But why do people micromanage? Well, at least I'll speak for myself. I've been micromanaged when my leader does not understand what it is I'm doing, or doesn't trust that I'm able to do it effectively. So what's the counter to that? The counter to that is acknowledge that this is merely a lack of alignment first. And that lack of alignment is natural. Why? Because really we all have three roles until we have a standard. There's the role we actually do, there's the role we actually want to do, and there's the role our boss expects us to do. And until we're aligned, those are different things, and they're in conflict. And that conflict, again, is usually the source of where concerns about micromanagement come. So instead, we want to make a visual standard where we align on it. We understand commonly this is what we should be doing. So who gets to define the requirements of the role? Well, in most deployments, the individual does, because they have a better understanding of what the work is and what the role entails. But that can't be the whole of the thing, because that structure won't self-stand. It really includes the leader defining, this is the requirements that the organization has of this role. Here are my expectations of this role, and then of you as a contributor. But even that is not an archway that will stand. It needs another leg, and that other leg is the expectations of our team. That's our direct reports, that's our partners we work with, and that's our customers both within and outside the organization. Really, all three groups have to be aligned for the requirements or the defined role per the standard work to be correct. And until that happens, it is not correct. And it really has a risk of breaking and not sustaining over time. So alignment has to be tackled head on. And what we found is by tackling it head on, we actually eliminate conflict and eliminate micromanagement. That brings us to the third and final root cause. And that was lack of reflection. But it's understandable where we might get some pushback still about leader standard work. And that is, but no day will be standard. So yes, I make this beautiful document. It clearly says what I want to do, and people agree that's what we should be doing, but no day is going to match that document. Yes, you are correct. No day will match that document. Because lean's not about setting a standard and achieving that standard in one move. Lean's about setting a target, expecting we will miss it, but learning why we've missed it so we can refine our method and get closer and closer and sustainably closer to the target over time. So we expect to miss standard work. And I've been in organizations, though, where they don't really think of standard work this way. They think of it as thou must do and compliance, rather than set a target, learn why we miss, and improve by that learning. So reflection is a key aspect. And there's two reflections that have to happen. There's the most obvious one of me as an individual, reflecting on how easy is it for me to achieve this target that I want to achieve. And reactively getting hurdles out of the way, and proactively finding recurring hurdles and eliminating those from ever happening, systemic improvement. More critically, though, there is the second level review, which is the leader review of that standard. Because again, the responsibility, or at least in my opinion, the responsibility is on that leader to say the standard work of my direct reports is correct, that I've defined the right role for them, with the right amount of time to do the role, with the right amount of flexibility. And I'm also looking for, are they successfully being able to get their own hurdles out of the way? What hurdles do I have to get out of the way for them? And how do I have to develop them to be able to get more hurdles out of the way? So this reflection is a critical component. It's literally the teaching. This is where we'll learn how to get the behaviors we're looking for. So therefore, if it is absent, then you're not really practicing leader standard work. You just have a nice piece of paper, and they are nice and shiny, and they are colorful, but they're just paper without the reflection. Okay. So to summarize, leader standard work, what's its purpose? Its purpose is it's a means to learn how to manage and define and improve a role and a routine. Commonly, there are 3 root causes preventing sustained deployment, and each of those has countermeasures. When the purpose is lacking, let's make it a good purpose. We want to have successful days. Everyone deserves to have successful days, and to have successful days, you need to have capacity and you need to have priority. Okay? But that's not enough. We have to connect those expectations. We need alignment. But that's the reward. You get alignment with your leader. You get alignment with your team. And finally, lack of reflection. Well, the counter is we reflect together, which is huge in team building. But more beneficial, or maybe not more beneficial, more importantly to me as an individual, is when I do the reflection, my role gets easier because we're learning what are the hurdles. Not only that, my role gets better. We may add more value-added tasks to my role because now we've got capacity for it. We may eliminate things that were more cumbersome and burdensome that are no longer required. So literally, not only is my role getting easier, my role's getting better because of leader standard work. So I encourage you to take the challenge and try to use this for yourself and your organization. Know there will be stumbling blocks and roadblocks, but they can be overcome. And good luck in everything you do. Thank you for your time today.